Hello and welcome to Whimsy Creek Art. Today's video is a compilation of some flower paint pours, some abstract floral pours. This is episode 8 of our Basics of Paint Pour series. And so we are using this 24-piece Craft Smart set. We're going to do a bottle bottom pour for the first one. I've cut the bottom off of a Propel bottle. You can use any soda, sports drink, where it just kind of has those knobby parts on the bottom for the paint to flow off. The important thing is to make sure it's even so it evenly flows off. And so I'm just taking some of the bright blue and putting it around the corners, edges, just kind of to help it there. So there's going to be a little bit of blue negative space at the edges. And all of the paint is mixed up, 1 part paint to 3 parts Floetrol. And episode 1 of this paint pour series is the supplies, and then episode 2 was how I mixed the paint. And so this base coat does not have silicone in it. A couple of the colors I use do have silicone, but this base coat does not have silicone. And I'm just spreading it out to the sides, making sure it goes over to the edge a little bit, getting all the sides and everything. And so now we have it all spread out to the edges and the corner. That just gives it a little bit of negative space there, a little bit of blue on the edge. But you could have done that with any color. You could have white or black, just any color really on the edges and the corner. And so now we've got the bottom of the bottle, and so you can use any sort of plastic bottle. I'm going to put just a little bit of yellow here in the center, and all the paints are the same consistency. And so now we're just going to pour some of the pink blast, some of the violet, and the violet does have 2 drops of treadmill oil, 2 drops of 100% silicone, and then the light yellow and the dark pink. And this does have the bright pink. It does have silicone. So the violet and the darker pink do have silicone. Both only have 2 drops. And so you're just going back and forth, making layers of each of the colors, trying to make sure it evenly goes down all the sides. Sometimes it doesn't, but that's okay. Try to do what you can to evenly pour it to where it goes down all the sides. And so mine's kind of making 6 petals, and that is a Propel sports drink bottle. It's in the US. We have Propel sports drink bottles. So you can look at the bottom of your soda or your sports drink bottles or some of your water bottles, and they have these little kind of knobs that they sit on. So try to find one that has the most little knobs or ones of different size. I even have a little bottle from a tiny little soda that I often use for smaller canvases. This canvas is a 10 by 10 inch. All the canvases we're using in this series are 10 by 10 inch. And so I'm just going back and forth between each of the colors, both of the pinks, the light yellow, the violet. And so I'm just using up the rest of some of these colors. And now we're going to go ahead and try to get all the last little bit off the bottom of this, because there's quite a bit of paint here. And another thing, you want to make sure that you have kind of a landing spot for this bottle, because you're going to pick it up here in just a moment and it's going to be full of paint. So I like to have another pan or something set aside to make sure this bottle has a landing spot. So I'm just pushing some of that excess off the bottom to not waste it. There's a lot of paint pulled up right there. And so now that I've gotten all the excess paint, I just lift it directly up and try to carefully get it without dripping it too much on there. And then you'll see that the center has that yellow and it kind of is just filling in there. I'm going to go ahead and tilt it a little, but without tilting it too much to really lose our design. So this here is a bottle bottom pour. And so at this point you can leave it like this and this be your flower and then just leave it. And so I do have a little bit of bald spots on the canvas. I'm just going to go ahead and fill those in with the background blue color. And so at this point you can, once you've got the bald spots filled in, you can just leave it and this be your flower and you don't have to do anything more. You can run skewer through it or a popsicle stick or the end of the palette knife to kind of give more definition to those petals. So you can kind of see it's not quite to the center. So I'm kind of fiddling with it, trying to get that more to the center. It wants to fall to the top of the screen. So what I have here is plastic. You can use plastic wrap, saran wrap. I have the wrapping to a larger canvas is what I have. So make sure no air bubbles are on there. So this is a reverse dip. And this is kind of inspired by Fiona Arts. She does amazing reverse dips. So I'm making sure I have no air bubbles. I'm making sure I have a landing spot for this to go to. And this is just the plastic wrap from a larger canvas. Grabbing each of the corners, pulling it up to the center. I like to grab opposite corners. I grab like the left bottom corner, then the top right corner, then I grab the right corner, bottom corner, and the top left corner, kind of opposite corners of each other. I grabbed them up in my hand, grabbed up all four corners and lifted straight up and moved it onto my landing spot. And so beautiful cells popped up. Now I did pull up a little bit too much of that blue from the corners, from the edges. So I had little bald spots. So I'm just pulling that blue off to the edge a little bit to make sure that it goes all the way down over the sides. And I don't have any bald spots. But this is a reverse dip. Reverse dips do not have to start out as the bottle bottom pour. Just that's how I did this one. It was just one example of the reverse dip. But you can also do a reverse dip by putting just like a spiral of paint. Check out Fiona Arts channel. She has many different examples of her flowers that she does with a reverse dip technique. And so this is just a bottle bottom pour with a reverse dip on top to create this kind of abstract floral look. Now I am just running the corner of the edge of my palette knife through just to kind of define those petals a little bit more, to make it kind of more a defined flower. But this is just a very abstract flower. And so this video is a compilation of several different techniques to make flowers, to make floral abstract flowers in the paint pour world. So here I have a little section of aquarium tubing, and I'm just going to go ahead and blow out very gently the edges, kind of just to kind of make it more of kind of a flowy petal edge look instead of just a circle in the middle of this canvas. So you can use a straw, you can use your reusable silicone straws, I mean anything here. I use aquarium tubing because I can kind of really move that around where I want to, and I can reuse it over and over and over again. But you don't have to. You can just leave it at that point. You didn't have to do that last little bit. That's what I did. And so here is a close-up of our reverse dip on a bottle bottom pour. And so only two colors had silicone. So look at all those cells with only two colors having silicone. I really like that one and how it turned out. And so next we are going to do another flower. And so all of these paints in this video are mixed exactly the same. They are just these Craft Smart paints mixed with Floetrol. And I have US American Floetrol. And so my base paint, my colors I'm using, everything is mixed the same. It's 1 part paint, 3 parts Floetrol. So this one I'm just putting a base of white, and again this is a 10 by 10 inch canvas. All the colors are the same consistency, just spreading out the white nice and thin. You don't want too much paint on your canvas for this technique. And this is a blown flower. This is how I do my blown flowers without using the bloom ingredients. So the bloom is a Shelley Carruthers paint pour technique. Now this is different. This doesn't have the Australian Floetrol or all the added ingredients. This is a total different. The blooms that have all those added ingredients are absolutely gorgeous, but this is like comparing apples and oranges. This is a completely different flower. It's a blown flower, but it's just using the ingredients, the paint, Floetrol, and silicone. That's it. So I have some of the bright pink, then I have some of the pink blast. The bright pink does have silicone. And then the yellow, the bright yellow, does have silicone. And they only have 1 to 2 drops, not much. So you can blow this out with your mouth, you can blow this out with your straw, anything. But I like to use this aquarium tubing. I like to use it because see how as I'm blowing through, real gently blowing, not blowing hard, I'm feathering that back and forth as I'm blowing it out. So I went around the canvas and didn't just do like all the way clockwise. I went kind of skipping back and forth some of the parts because that gives kind of a more organic shape to the flower. And so I'm just gently blowing across the surface of the paint. I've got my aquarium tubing kind of at a 45-degree angle, and I just carefully blow across the surface of the paint. So I'm giving it a little bit of torch just to kind of pop some of those air bubbles. I did create quite a few air bubbles blowing across, so just give it a quick torch to pop the air bubbles. But this is just another example of a floral paint pour. And so you can do this in any colors, any color background. You can do multiple ones on a canvas at a time. But here is a close-up shot of just a blown flower paint pour. And so there is many different ways you can do fluid acrylic paint poured flowers. So many different techniques, and this video just has a few different examples. There is many more examples of floral or abstract flower paint pours in fluid acrylics. And so this next one, I did do one very similar during the puddle pour video. I believe that was video number 3 to this series. So I have done something similar, but we're going to come back through and do it a little bit different on this one. So we have the light yellow, we have the coral, we have the gray, and we have the burgundy. And this is on a dry canvas. It does not have a base on it. It is a dry canvas. None of these colors have silicone. They are all the same consistency. 1 part paint, 3 parts Floetrol, and none of these paints needed water because they are kind of a thinner paint to begin with. The craft paints are a little bit thinner than say your medium body or your paints in a tube. So I did not need to add water to any of these. They were just the right consistency with 1 part paint, 3 parts Floetrol. So we're just alternating back and forth between our colors, and we're putting down just puddles here in the center, trying to keep this in the center. It does seem to want to keep flowing off the wrong way. If you get a drip, don't worry about it. I just pushed that drip down below in the gray, and now you can't even tell I dripped there. So no worries at all. So just put little puddles here in the center. I did put a little bit of gray around the edge because it had swallowed up a lot of that gray. And so now I'm just puddling here in the center, and this is going to be kind of like a 3D kind of abstract dahlia, or kind of just a 3D kind of flower. And so you're just going to want to continue to get a whole bunch of little puddles alternating back and forth between each of your colors. And you can do this pour with silicone. You are going to get a totally different look, and you're not going to have those defined rings of color. And so I chose to do one without silicone for this one. You just alternate back and forth between colors, and so you until you get a nice puddle of a bunch of the layers of the more layers of paint you get, the more 3D this one is gonna look. So I am going to go ahead and put just a little bit of this gray around the edge, just to make sure that I have a little bit of negative space here, and I can see that the paint is wanting to. I'm not having very good luck with level canvases here, am I? And the paint is wanting to flow off to the top of the screen here. So I am going to kind of tilt it here. Hopefully you are actually not having this issue and you're able to keep it kind of in the center. But I just wanted to show you everybody has their fills as well, and I'm just doing my best to keep this one to the center. And no worries, I'm just going with it and making sure I continue, just even if it's not completely centered. It's okay. I kind of like that look, actually. So now I'm taking the tip of the palette knife and I'm just running it through to the center to create that kind of 3D dahlia look. So how I did it is I started at one side and then I went to the opposite side, and I've just worked my way back and forth around the canvas, pulling in a lot to the center. And so then I've got, the center was looking kind of funky. I just kind of twirled my palette knife in the center to kind of create it a kind of a center, more of a flower look there. So all right, this one kind of did flow off kind of funky where it's not in the center, but I kind of like it. So this is just another example of a 3D flower look, and I did do one of these also at episode 3 of this paint pour series as well. And so I also want to show a couple of examples of flowers that I have done that are going to require some embellishment later. So here, my next series coming up is going to be embellishing paint pours, adding to paint pours. And so we're going to do all kinds of different techniques and stuff to add to our paint pours. So these next two are going to be kind of an example of that. They're not the finished product. I will add a little bit of stuff to them. So I have a balloon that I'm going to go ahead and do kind of a balloon roll. See how I'm dipping the balloon in and kind of rolling it. So this was both of the yellows and the violet. So the darker yellow and the violet both have silicone. So I kind of dipped and I did have a base. I had a base of white that did not have silicone. Now I am taking the aquarium tubing and just blowing out those edges. Now these are kind of an abstract, abstract wisteria is what I'm gonna try to end up with. So now I'm pulling down just almost like kind of a stem kind of an area. And I'm going to, once this is completely dry, I will come back in with some brush work to kind of give some details. So right now it's looking almost kind of like blobs. It's hard to tell that those are flowers. But eventually, on a later video, I would like you to subscribe and come back on a later video and see how I have embellished this one to kind of create it to be even more of a flower look. And the next one in this video, one last paint pour, it will also be one of those ones that I'll embellish. So alright, now I've got a little bit of green. It does not have silicone. I'm getting a little bit on the end of my palette knife and just pulling it down kind of to make it look like these kind of a stem and some leaves and kind of a base to the plant. So I'm just pulling this green down and making it look like the base to the plant. And a few leaves on the stems. And I will come back in when this is completely dry and create some kind of more detail so you can see what this all looks like. So that's an example of a balloon dip, and it's kind of a balloon dip and roll. It's kind of, because I didn't just dip into the canvas, I kind of rolled it as I dipped. So right now they're kind of funky looking, but please subscribe and come back at a later video so you can see how I kind of bring these a little bit more detail and create a little bit more depth to them as well. So we have one last paint pour, one last flower, and it is very similar to the second one we did on this video. It is a blown paint pour, but I want to just show a little bit what happens if you have too thick of a surface. Your paint is not the consistency too thick, I mean too thick too much on the canvas. So I took these two blues, the pale blue and the bright blue, and I mixed them together to create a more medium blue. And I did not mix them completely because I wanted kind of a background with just a little bit of, see how it's pretty much I'm mixing them on the canvas. And I like to do this with my backgrounds where I don't 100% mix it in the cup or the bottle, where it kind of creates that kind of striations of the two colors together. It's a real neat look for a background. And so I wanted to share that and share, you know, mix your colors up and create your new colors. This is a pretty medium blue. I didn't want the real bright blue, but I didn't want the real pale blue. And so I mixed it up and made a whole different blue. So just kind of spreading that out with my palette knife, getting it to the edge. My base color does not have silicone. I never put silicone in my base color because it's going to be real hard for that color, that base color, to adhere to the canvas. If you have silicone in it, you'll get little bald spots. So alright, I'm just taking both of those pinks, the violet, both those yellows, and I'm layering those in. The darker yellow, the violet, the darker pink all have silicone. Now I'm doing that same blown technique, feathering that across, blowing that out. And so I wanted to show this one because this is somewhat of a failed paint pour, but I wanted to show my background, my blue is just too much. So it swallowed up a lot of those colors, but it did create some neat kind of cell action there on the top. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in and embellish this one as well. I'm gonna add a little bit later to it once it's dry. So all right, that is 5, or you can count the first one as kind of 2 paint pours, so 6 paint pours in one video. 6 different examples of how you can do a abstract flower in a paint pour, an abstract flower with fluid acrylics. And so there's many different ways you can do flowers. This is just an example of a few different ways, but there's so many more ways than this. And so thank you so much for watching, and next video is gonna be blown paint pours and Dutch paint pours. So I'll have lots of tips and tricks on how to do a blown paint pour, a Dutch paint pour. And then the next video after that will be tree rings, ring pours. And after that, we'll talk about what do you do once these paint pours have dried? How long do they take to dry? And what do you do? How do you clean this silicone off? And how do you varnish it? And what do I use to varnish? So we're kind of winding down this series. Only 3 more videos in this series. But thank you so much for watching, and I really appreciate it. And as always, if you have any questions, please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much, and have a great day.